What up, this is Patrick Haize. In this video, I want to talk about how to manage other people's low vibes. Now, one of the issues that a lot of my clients and I have, and many of us have probably experienced, is that we find ourselves in situations where we're around other people with really low vibes, and it's hard for us to manage, especially when we're on a path of raising our vibration, spiraling up, becoming a new person, stabilizing all these new belief systems and thoughts and things that are harmonious for our lives. And then we find ourselves having to be in different situations, whether it's with coworkers, whether it's with our in-laws, whether it's with different family members. We're in these situations where people are of a low vibration and they drag us down. So what do we do? How do we manage this? How do we navigate through this issue that many of us experience on a regular basis? Well, I want to go into it from several different angles. The first angle I want to go into it from is just basically understanding the dynamics of oftentimes what happens, so that we can more accurately navigate through there and minimize the amount of negativity that we take on. And then what I want to do is I want to talk about how we can look at things from the big picture in a way that helps us stabilize a new higher vibration that eventually becomes more resilient and can withstand being around more lower vibrations. And then at the end, what I want to talk about is different energy clearing practices that we can do to help clear our energy up and help us bounce back more quickly when we do take on negative energy. Okay, so on the first level, boundaries. What is going on here and how do we set better boundaries? So one of the common ways, and there's a lot of different ways that people can take on negative energy from people that have low vibes, but one of the ways that I commonly see it happen is that you can think of it as like you have your own world, right? You have your own paradigms, you have your own vibration, your set point vibration where you like to vibrate at, and you have your own way of relating to the world. And somebody else that has like a really low vibes has their own world also. Now, when we have not stabilized our high vibe world to a really strong degree, then if we're around other people that have a really strong low vibe world, it can oftentimes suck us into that low vibe. Now, one of the ways you will oftentimes see this play out is if you have some sort of relationship with a person and you feel like that other person seems to always hog all the airspace. So they have like a certain kind of frame control, it seems, so that when you're in conversation with them, when you're hanging out with that person, what they're thinking, their thoughts and views, their dramas, whatever's going on with them kind of takes over the room. It takes over the situation and it pulls your consciousness into their story, into their world, right? And then you move out of your world and you're in their world. And you oftentimes maybe find yourself listening to them or responding to them and not knowing how else to respond, but you're in this really uncomfortable vibration because they're kind of running the ship and you don't know how to pull yourself out of it. Well, part of this is indicative of the lack of ability to truly set boundaries, which is sometimes due to the lack of ability to really ground in the higher vibration and the world that we live in. So the idea is that when we really ground in our true identity, usually what happens in those kinds of situations is we will say different things that are honoring our own truth that will either do one of a few things. One, it will either polarize the other person where they might get upset and then leave or try to start an argument, or it might actually tip the scale and knock them up into our world, right? And this is ideally the space that we want to get into. But when we're being truly honest with ourselves and we're truly stabilized in our dimension, when people are coming with a different world that conflicts with our world, just naturally us being ourselves, we'll find ourselves saying things like, you know what, I actually don't really agree with that. And I feel like you're being quite negative here. Like, no offense, but like I just feel like what you're doing is you're spinning in something negative and it doesn't feel good. Like it doesn't feel good in my body. So how about we think about this, or how about we talk about this? And this will be something that can be done in a very natural way where we're not triggered when we're saying that. And this really takes like a new level of stabilization, because if we're going to make a statement like that, that's say risky in really triggering somebody, it's really important that we are not triggered while we're making that statement. Because if we're triggered, if we're upset, and we make that statement when we're upset, all they're going to be able to see is that triggered aspect of ourselves, which gives them all the ammo in the world to come after us for being inappropriate or insulting them or saying negative things. But if they can feel that it's only love coming from us when we say that, and we're just naturally being ourselves, they may still react in a negative way, but it's going to be much less likely that they are going to try to attack us or get into an argument. You might find them just kind of like have a moment of realization and like kind of look at themselves and then feel awkward and walk away, but it's going to go over a lot better. Now, a lot of us might not be prepared to respond in that way. So what do we do if we haven't fully stabilized that? Well, we have a few different options here. If this is just politics and we have to be with this person, we have to spend time with them, then one of the things we can do is we can minimize the amount of time that we spend with them. One, right? So have a good exit plan, just spend the amount of time that we need to and get out of there. This is something that probably everybody has experience with doing. Another thing we can do is let go of the idea of trying to make the situation comfortable or feel good, right? You realize that maybe you don't have the power to shift the field, or maybe you can't quite say those bold things at this point. So don't expect yourself to have to do that, because one of the issues is when we don't succeed at being able to hold our own field in a field with somebody else that's dragging us down, oftentimes then we can beat ourselves up for it and then spiral down and we feel even worse about it. So one of the things we can do is that if we don't feel like we're strong enough at that level, we know this is going to be a difficult situation to be in, it's just going to be a low vibe thing, then what we can do is when we find ourselves in that situation, we can just accept that this is going to be low vibe, we're going to experience that quite a bit. And instead of focusing on trying to shift the situation, having conflict by trying to make the vibe different, we can focus internally on just accepting that this other person's low vibe and not trying to change the vibe, not trying to change their vibe to something better, but sit more in the acceptance, sit more in ourself. See, oftentimes we feel like we have to shift somebody else in order for everything to work. Well, I got to change the whole vibe of the room for everything to work. Well, don't worry about that. Just focus on yourself. Just focus on accepting it, and then focus on observing the other people, right? So obviously, you're probably an empathic person. So when you feel somebody else in low vibes, it feels like you kind of become them, right? And if you're focusing on their conversation, it can be really intense because it feels like you are them and you're going through the pain and you're feeling the pain that they're feeling. A couple things you can do is focus on your own vibe and look at them as if you're observing them. It's like, wow, I'm watching this person and I'm seeing that they're in pain, but I'm choosing not to harmonize with that pain. I'm just watching it. One good trick that you can do is instead of looking directly in their eyes, which is by looking in somebody's eyes, you're getting a direct transmission from them and the inner space that they're in, you can look like right in between their eyes, like right here. It's a great trick for not absorbing other people's energy. But the idea is to not get stuck on the idea that you need to shift the dynamic, but rather that you can sit in your own space and just observe them. Let them do their thing, play along with them. Maybe they hog the conversation. That's okay. You're going to sit in your space and you're just going to smile at your heart and you're going to do your best to remain in your own space and not try to shift the external situation. And then as far as being able to build up your capacity to be able to shift the dynamic, what you want to do is when you are in your own space, on your own time, you want to work on just developing gratitude, developing positive vibes within yourself, and thinking about the other person from time to time and sending them love, feeling compassion for the situation that they're in, realizing that whatever it is that they're going through is their own thing. There's nothing wrong with that. They're allowed to do that. They're allowed to feel those low vibes. They're allowed to be the person that they are. Don't resist that, right? But what you can do is realize that even though it's uncomfortable for you to maybe be around that person, the best thing you can do for yourself and for them is to not fight that, but just gently send them love. You have to get past the resentment that you have for that person and the way that they make you feel. You have to get past the frustration that you have when you're in proximity with them and they're making you feel uncomfortable, right? You have to get into an acceptance role. Now, when I say acceptance, I don't mean you just accept that this person drags you all around and causes a bunch of drama. Again, set the boundaries that you can. If it's appropriate, you can stop hanging out with this person altogether, and that would be great. But if that's inappropriate and due to the politics, you need to be around this person, then it's best to not resist it or try to fight it. Rather, accept that that's just who that person is and they're allowed to do that, and that you are going to choose to do your best to love that person and just be in a high vibe regardless. And what you'll find is that over time, you will naturally be able to just sit more in your own vibe. And again, this comes from spending time in that space when you are in a safe space and really getting to know what that true vibe of you is. And when you know what that is, then when you see foreign vibrations that are trying to pull you into it, it's so foreign that it doesn't suck you in. There's not a magnetization to it because you are now magnetized to the vibration that you've set as your set point, and other people can't pull you into their world so much. Then naturally, by sitting in that space, you basically start pulling them into your world. And then you'll find that you just being your own natural self will end up saying things like I was mentioning earlier that can polarize the person or potentially shift them into your world and raise the vibration of the entire dynamic. Now, in the meantime, while you're working on this, you will potentially find yourself in situations where you take on negative energy. So maybe you go, and every time you go to your in-laws' house, you come back and you feel crappy for like the whole next day or the whole next week or however long it is. So what I want to give here are some specific energy clearing practices that you can do to really help yourself not take on extra energy, but then also clear the energy after you've been in that situation. So I already mentioned the one about being able to look in between the people's eyes as opposed to looking directly in their eyes. Another thing that you can do is you can cross your arms and hold it over your solar plexus, because your solar plexus is the center in your body where you take on a lot of energy from other people. So naturally, a lot of people, you'll notice that you might feel safer when your solar plexus is crossed, or when you find yourself in an uncomfortable situation, you might naturally kind of cover that area. Well, that's a natural instinct because it's actually helping you from being courted and protecting you from being courted by other people of low vibration. So you can do this consciously too. You can cover your solar plexus and you can look not directly in their eyes. And this is a great way to avoid taking on some of the negative energy. Now, another thing that you can do is you can put a glass of salt water in between you and the other person. Now, the nature of salt is something that just really transmutes, it neutralizes negative energy. So you can create the intention that instead of taking the energy on, that you are going to usher the energy into this cup of salt water. And by doing that, it creates a kind of ritual, right? So it's a focusing of your consciousness. This is why rituals are powerful. It's a focusing of your consciousness on a particular intention. And then it's something that you've actually manifested a physical action that you take in the world that adds more intention or more energy to the intention of not taking on that energy. So when you do that, it's working on a mental level, but then also the metaphysics of the particular salt is going to neutralize the energy too. So when you do that, it can start funneling the energy into the salt water as opposed to coming into your body. So there's a great way of being able to not take on the energy. Now, after the fact, some of the things you can do, well, one that you may have heard of is smudging. So you can get sage and you can clear the space with sage and clear yourself with sage. Another thing you can do is EFT tapping. I like to EFT tap because it taps the meridians on my body. You can look up EFT tapping. And I let all the energy move out of my body and then I shake it out and I stomp my foot on the ground. And I imagine the energy going into the earth and then blossoming into something beautiful. So the earth neutralizes it into something beautiful for me. Again, these are all rituals that concentrate your energy into a physical action and make your intention more powerful. They also have physiological effects like the tapping moves your meridians. So it actually moves energy out your meridians. So if your meridians got stuck and binded by the low energy, this will help the energy move. Like I mentioned, sage. Sage is very purifying. It purifies toxins in the air. It does a lot of different things. And it also has metaphysical properties that clear out dense, heavy energies. So that can be really powerful too. Taking a salt bath can be really, really powerful. And another thing that's really powerful is obsidian, black obsidian, or most black stones do this, full black stones. But you can program, actually you would say instruct, you can instruct a black obsidian to pull negative energy into it when it enters into your field. So what you want to do is you want to instruct it, say, Spirit of the Obsidian, please pull in all negative energy that enters within 5 feet of my energy field and hold that energy until I come to clear you. And make sure you're clearing your obsidian by putting it in salt water or putting it in vodka or something on a regular basis because it absorbs a lot of negative energy and eventually it's like a trash can, it gets full, right? So you want to clear that energy out on a regular basis and make sure you also instruct the crystal that or the stone that no one else can instruct that stone except for you. This is another way of being able to prevent taking on energy into your energy field. This way, the stone will take the hit as opposed to your energy field. Now, there are other different clearing rituals you could do also, but I think this gives you a good framework and a good fundamental understanding of the different things that you can do to manage low vibe energy in your life. So thank you so much for tuning in. This is Patrick Haize. Like, subscribe, share with your friends. And if this video is particularly useful for you, or if you know anybody else that you feel like this video would be particularly useful for, please share it with them. I would really appreciate it. And once again, thanks for tuning in, and I will talk to you next time. One love.